Hi everyone, so today I wanted to do a video on another video on healing, but it's going to be kind of different than the ones I've normally done. Also, I just want to give a shout out to all of you guys who support my channel, all you who watch my videos, comment, subscribe. I do notice when I get new subscribers, and I just want to welcome you to this YouTube family, this channel. And I just want to thank you guys for um, your support. And I really hope that the videos that I make um, are really helping you. So, yes, and I also just want to say to comments that I have not responded to yet, I'm not ignoring you. I just like to mull over and think over the comments before I um, comment on them. So for any of you that are waiting for me to respond to comments, I am going to do that. I just want to make sure I have the proper time to respond in the way that is appropriate. So, alright, so today I'm going to be talking about healing. This idea of this destination of healing and of being healed enough. Striving for this image or ideal of when we finally have everything together. People looking at you or mentioning things about you needing to heal. So those are just some of the notes I have on my phone. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about healing, and we're also going to talk about this idea or this image of when you finally have everything together, that I feel like we as humans often kind of measure ourselves up to and often try to live up to, and kind of almost how it's this illusion. So it's not that I have a problem with healing, it's about this premise. It's feeling like you're not okay wherever you are in your life while taking steps to move forward. It's this idea that's kind of perpetuated of feeling like you're not okay if you're in a certain place in your life, if you're struggling or still being affected by things you've been through, and if you're not constantly seeking and striving for this place of being healed, as if when you reach this place, then you're okay, then you're finally enough. It's the shame and sometimes embarrassment we internalize from society when it comes to the very human things we feel and the way we learn to respond and react after we've been through painful events and traumatic experiences, and the way our minds and bodies have learned to cope with life and navigate the world as they've helped us endure everything we've been through. Okay, so let's unpack all this. So yeah, I want to first talk about this destination of healing or of being healed enough that I feel like we hear a lot in society. And even recently, I didn't really know how like healing ministries worked, Christian healing ministries, but I feel like that's another thing that is kind of perpetuated within that. Not that it's a society, but it's a sect of Christianity, but it's kind of these multiple ideals, essentially, that we kind of have put into our minds. And I don't know about you, but we all, if you have struggled, we all long for this place of healing. So it's not just an ideal, but it's something that we long for as humans when we are struggling, when we have been through pain. So there's nothing wrong with it. But I want to talk about us kind of getting out of that place of almost putting it on a pedestal or seeing ourselves as good enough when we have reached that place, and instead coming from that place of knowing that we are enough and that it is okay for us to be wherever we are in our lives, that we wouldn't internalize the shame from society, and that we wouldn't look at ourselves as a project that needs to be fixed. Okay. In society and in Christianity, we learn to see ourselves in many ways as these endless self-reflection improvement projects that need to be fixed. We see this brokenness within ourselves when we feel like we're struggling. And I don't know about you, but like for a very long time, I think both with kind of the self-improvement that we see in society and things like that, and I think self-improvement can be a really great thing and fascinating thing, and the fact that we have control over different aspects of our lives and that we can work and address different areas that we maybe aren't the happiest with. But as someone that kind of lived my life in that way, in this very perfectionist way, and I constantly saw myself as someone that needed to be fixed, constantly saw things that needed to be fixed, and a lot of that came from things that were said to me. I don't know about you, but if you have been told that like you're unhappy or you're anxious or you have had any kind of mental health label put on you, we can see ourselves through that lens as, I'm not okay where I am in my life. I'm not okay if I'm struggling in this way. And I just want this video, first of all, to be a reminder that it is okay if you are struggling with anything. And by that, I want you to feel better. And you don't deserve to struggle. But by that, I mean, it's okay if you are struggling. It is not something you have to be ashamed of. We can feel pushed by different voices around us or in society when we're struggling just to catch our breath, or we find it hard to be happy, when sometimes we feel so much pain or we feel like we're running on exhaustion and have no strength left, as we look at others around us and feel like they're not struggling to that extent. We can feel behind or question if there's something wrong with us, as people sometimes make us feel like we're not doing enough or we feel pushed to heal. Okay. Yeah, so I want to talk about this in the terms of that image we kind of see, where a lot of us think about, where either we are in some ways constantly trying to live up to this image of us having everything together, or we feel like we need to have everything together. I really believe that this image is almost like this illusion. And I believe this is very much perpetuated by society, but just as humans, because we learn to have so much shame around our emotions and the things we feel, and us struggling and us crying and all these different things. And then it doesn't help when, like, you have been through different things and then you feel like you're struggling after certain experiences, and then you have labels put on you kind of on top of everything. So, I just want to say I feel like we as a society would be so much healthier if we didn't constantly feel like we had to live up to this image of having everything together. That, in fact, let's just say that image doesn't even exist. That point where we have everything together, what if that doesn't even exist? Because life is not like a constant static experience, essentially. It is full of ups and downs, highs and lows. We don't know all the things that we're going to go through in this life, but I really feel like at least getting closer to that point where you feel like you have everything together, even though I don't believe that exists, happens when we learn to stop internalizing that shame from society for the very human things that we feel, the very emotions that we have after we've been through different pain and traumatic experiences. And when we can allow ourselves to express them and release them, and I feel like we as a society would be so much healthier if we weren't constantly looking at ourselves as constantly having to have everything together or appear that way or have shame if we feel like we don't, and constantly like trying to be as positive as possible and have a smile on our face all the time. Like, I feel like we as a society would be so much healthier if we just let go and released that idea of having everything together. What if we accepted that that doesn't even exist? Maybe it's simply an illusion. And I'm not saying you can't reach certain points in your life where you feel like you're able to navigate and cope with life better, or you have grown from things, or you feel like you can handle things that you couldn't previously. But I'm saying, what if we just let go of that ideal? What if we just allowed ourselves to be? And what if we could simply see ourselves and speak to ourselves in a way where we reminded ourselves that it is okay to be wherever you are in your life? And it doesn't mean you can't get to where you want to be, but right now in this very moment, what if we could relax in a way where it's like we could stop putting standards and expectations and pressures on ourselves to be a certain way, to look like we have everything together. But what if we could just know that there is nothing wrong with us when we are struggling or when we feel things emotionally, and we don't have to internalize that shame from society or the thoughts of our minds or what anyone has made us feel regarding our emotions, regarding the struggles that we have been through. And in that sense, what if this is something we struggled with, what if we didn't live our life in a way where it's like, okay, when I am healed enough or when I'm not struggling with this, then I can live my life, or then I'm finally enough, or then I'm finally okay, or then I don't have to feel shame. But what if right now in this very moment we could come to that place? Because the truth is, none of us have it together. It doesn't matter what someone looks like on the outside. None of us have everything together. We all go through different things. We have all been through pain. We have all struggled in some capacity. And yet it's the very, feeling like we have to have everything together, feeling like we have to appear a certain way, that disconnects us as a humanity. And sometimes I just think about it, how we all struggle with different things, and what we tend to do is not only internalize, but we keep all that inside. And meanwhile, it's like we're all struggling with all these things internally, but we don't tell people, or we feel this shame. We feel like we can't open up about it, or even just feel shame around our own emotions or our own struggles. And meanwhile, it's like the person next to you is struggling with their own battle. And yet, how much more connected as a society would we be, and even healthier if we just let go of that image of having everything together or being healed enough, and we could see ourselves as all of us to ourselves, that it's okay to be wherever we are in our lives. And whatever we feel, we don't have to be ashamed of. I feel like when I have kind of pondered and reflected over this in my own life, there's so many capacities to this. Essentially, there's stigma, there's things that people maybe have said to you, there's our own beliefs and shame that we've carried, there's how society makes you feel, all this stuff. But what I think is very powerful is when we can see ourselves in that way, because it's like, if we can say that to ourselves and remind that to ourselves, it's like, whatever someone else thinks about us, whatever society tries to slam down our throat, it's like, but this is how I see things and this is how I feel about myself. So if I believe it's okay for me to be wherever I am, it's okay if I'm struggling, then what society says, or these thoughts that come up, or what anyone has said to me, or how anyone has made me feel, is like, that really starts to fade and lose its grip and lose its power. Because I know how heavy it can be, that shame that we tend to internalize. And let's be honest, that when we struggle with things, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's emotional, it is hard enough to deal with that day in, day out, exhausting enough, taxing enough. But then when we take on that shame from society, it's like 10 times worse, because not only are we dealing with those struggles, but we're sitting there feeling this weight of shame around them. And all the times comparing ourselves, like, for me, when I was like struggling to go to classes, and I was like laying in my car, struggling to walk to classes, like, it's very easy to compare yourself to like what other people are able to do and how much they're able to do. And it's really easy, no matter what your scenario is. I'm just explaining like what it was like for me. It's very easy to compare yourself. It's very easy to feel behind in life. It's very easy to feel this sense of shame because you feel like you're struggling in a certain way and you feel like other people aren't, or you feel like other people are able to take on more. And yeah, there's just this sense of shame, essentially, you can feel, where, like I said, the struggle is hard enough. But then to internalize that shame, it's like you're sitting there, then you just feel even worse about it yourself. So as I was kind of going through all this, it really began to kind of force me to start kind of coming to that place where it was like I had to kind of see it in that way of, it is okay for me to be where I am in my life, and it's okay for me to be struggling in this way, and I don't need to feel shame. And I want to remind any of you of that too, if you're struggling with anything. Okay. I also want to talk about this concept of healing. I do believe in healing. I am someone that believes in like full healing to some extent, but basically, I just want to talk about like not kind of getting into that concept of where you're healed enough or whatever the case may be. Just that we wouldn't spend our lives looking at ourselves as broken projects that need to be fixed. You know, for me, it was like because I was struggling in certain ways at one point, it was like I saw myself as too broken to just do a lot of different things. One of them was like I felt like I needed to fix myself before like I could be in a relationship, or I felt like I needed to fix myself before I could start being vocal about things that I really cared about, or fill in whatever blank you want. I felt like I needed to fix this part of myself or this part of my appearance, and then then I could finally be enough. Or I felt like I needed to fix emotionally what I was going through, when I went through a point in my life where I was sobbing all the time, to actually feel like I didn't need to judge myself and didn't need to label myself and didn't need to analyze what I was feeling and what I was going through because I had been labeled. And I want to go into that a little bit, but me talking about that is really just me saying, when it comes to you guys, like, I don't want you to look at yourself as someone that constantly needs to be fixed or fix something about themselves. We can address things in our life and we can make improvements and we can do things that are going to better our lives and better ourselves, but it does not have to be from this place where we look at ourselves as a broken project that constantly needs to fix things, and then we finally fit this ideal, and then we finally have everything together, and then we're finally healed enough. And it's like, no, you are worthy of things right now in this very moment. Like, you are worthy of love simply because you exist. Not when you have everything resolved emotionally. Not when you feel like you have everything together. Not when you feel like, you're not a mess. But right now, in this very moment, you are worthy of and deserve to, use your voice right now. Like, be heard right now in this very moment. Not when you feel like you have reached this place of being healed enough. Etc., etc., etc. You are enough right now, not when you lose weight or improve this about your appearance, or no, right now in this very moment. So let's talk about like healing. So I talked about how when we feel like we're struggling, we can feel behind in life, or we can question if there's something wrong with us, as people can also sometimes make us feel like we're not doing enough, or we feel pushed to heal. And even though sometimes, people really want to help, people want to make us feel better, we can feel pushed to healer, we can sometimes feel like we're not okay if we are struggling. And I want to talk about this especially in a sense of like, for a lot of us, we look at healing as like, kind of like, for the most part, I feel like going back in our past and like talking about trauma we've been through and going over memories and things like that, or essentially what we kind of think of as like therapy, essentially. So I want to get into this, and I have kind of been seeing too that even when it comes to like healing ministries, there's a lot that tends to kind of go in that way as well, but from a Christian perspective. And I will say I am someone that really kind of looked for that in therapy, and when counselors would like ask if I had been through any traumatic experiences, I would say, but I'd kind of be waiting for like this moment where like they were actually gonna like help me heal from that, and I cannot tell you how many times like I have not experienced that. A lot of times I have felt someone just listen to me or like say I'm sorry that happened, but it's like when all those emotions are kind of flooding your mind essentially, it's like I've looked for that healing that people talk about that you're like going to experience when it comes to um, sharing those things and talking about those things. Because people will make you feel like, and I know for everyone's going to be different, but people will make you feel like once you do this, or once you go back to those memories or uncover those things from your past, then you won't struggle with this, or then, you'll feel better. So for some of us, we have not found help in therapy, and talking about all we've been through has only made us feel more stuck in the past. I don't know if anyone can relate. As people hear about our experiences, sometimes we can feel they are invalidated as we are made to doubt our perceptions and feel our voices being pushed down and silenced as we try to speak the truth of what we've been through, and our pain feels pathologized as labels are put on us. I just speak about this because this is something that I experienced pretty recently. I was sharing part of my testimony with a counselor. They were very curious about it the first time. The second time around, I was speaking about it, and I could tell their whole attitude was just very different. And after hearing like what I had struggled through and like what I had been through, um, this person's lens of me was, you know, labeling what I had been through. And I'm not saying I'm for or against labels or anything like that. I know it hasn't been the most helpful for me. But I speak about this because I want to speak up for those that have experienced this or experienced this in the mental health system. Where you feel like you're not really looked at as a human in a sense. And I know that sounds weird to say, but it's like when you're speaking about your experiences, and I want every single one of you to know your experiences are valid no matter who tries to make you feel like they're not. Because I feel like it's almost looked at as acceptable for someone to speak about their experiences or things they've struggled with, and then for people just to be labeled and made to feel crazy and made to feel like there's something wrong with them. That's what grinds my gears. Sorry guys, I get really excited about that, and it grinds my gears when people do that to anyone struggling. But it can almost feel like you're not looked at as like a human that has been through different pain, that has found different, sometimes unhealthy, sometimes destructive ways of coping with that pain, right? And also how the mind has learned to cope with the pain and the trauma that you have been through. And it can almost feel like when you are explaining that and when you're explaining your struggles, again, not every counselor, but it can feel like you're not looked at as a human that has been through all this pain, but you're just looked at through this lens of a label. And I feel like for me personally, that, it's like what you say isn't looked at as valid, and you're made to doubt your perceptions to some capacity, especially if you've been through gaslighting. And it can feel like your voice is being pushed down and you are being silenced. Like I said, as we try to speak the truth of what we've been through, and my gears get grinded when it comes to this because I don't like it when people's pain is being pathologized and people are having labels put on them. Can they be helpful? Sometimes, yes. But I don't like people having their voices pushed down and being labeled instead, and people being made to feel like there's something wrong with them because they've been through trauma, because they've been through pain, and now they feel affected by it. And I hope you guys understand what I mean by this, and I hope nothing I'm saying is insensitive or offensive to anyone. We start to see ourselves through this lens of something being wrong with us inherently, or after pain has changed our lives in tremendous ways, and we feel we're grappling just to get back on our feet and keep going in our lives after everything that's happened. Now, I got so passionate talking about this because for me personally, I didn't understand for a really long time that the labels that were put on me and the way I was kind of looked at and spoken to, I mean, even just recently, but I've started to understand more and more of my life and spiritual components and like obviously have experienced mental and emotional healing. But I didn't understand for a long time that me going through the mental health system, me having labels put on me, all that stuff, it really made me doubt myself. And then going through gaslighting, it made me doubt myself even more. It made me doubt my perceptions even more, especially when you feel like you're constantly having something drilled into your head that something is wrong with you. It made me feel like I couldn't trust my perceptions. It made me feel like if I even spoke up, people would see me a certain way. And it made me analyze my every action for a long time and just question everything I did, And the big thing was like when I struggled with things emotionally or mentally, for example, when I went through a period where I was just sobbing all the time, instead of seeing that as I'm sobbing because I just went through a bunch of mental and emotional and verbal abuse, and I'm sad and I'm in pain after that. And physically, I was like in pain. I was starting to deal with physical stuff. I was starting to struggle with my voice. My throat was tensing up all the time. I had so much pain in my throat. Um, I was in fight or flight all the time. I was exhausted all the time, not to mention the emotional pain. But it's like I was crying, I was sobbing because I was in pain, I was hurting. And that was my mind's way of processing all that pain. But for a while, what I would do is I would look at that and I would think, because I had a label put on me, like, this is depression or this is bipolar depression. I'm in a depressive episode right now. And why this wasn't helpful, because it wasn't fully about the label, but it was about seeing something wrong with me because of the very normal reactions and responses I was having to what I had been through. That's what grinds my gears when people are not looked at as human for the pain that they've been through, and instead it is like pathologized. That's what grinds my gears. So over time, and let me tell you, like I was very scared to um, just stop doing that, stop analyzing everything, stop analyzing when I felt sad or when I was crying or, um, but it really made me doubt myself and it really made me doubt my perceptions. And, those labels were also used to kind of justify the abuse I was going through. So that did not help matters. Um, but I speak on this because if any of you are going through that, I want you to know there's nothing wrong with you. Whether or not you taken that label or not, if you had a label put on you, that is up to you. Um, I know for me though, like I just wanted to be Macy, you know? And I want you guys to know that if you've had a label put on you, you are not defined by that label. You are not defined by your struggles, no matter what anyone has said. And whatever your name is, um, that is who you are. You know, that person that, um, every facet of your personality and who you are as a person, that is who you are. And I want you guys to look at yourself as there is nothing wrong with you. If you are struggling, if you are hurting, and I hope that makes sense. And by that I mean, like, there's nothing inherently wrong with you. And there's nothing wrong with you in a way where, you're broken. And I hope this makes sense. And like I said, I hope I'm not being offensive or insensitive to what anyone has gone through or anything like that. I am sharing part of my story though, because I didn't realize certain things for a long time. And I didn't realize how much those experiences had really pushed my voice down and made me afraid to speak and made me feel like I couldn't trust my perceptions and made me just analyze and label everything that I struggled with for a long time. Okay, so I want to illustrate how this isn't God's voice toward us, but only human voices. Excuse me. That make you feel like it's not okay for you to be struggling or to be where you are in your life. Like you need to be like trying to heal and fix yourself and all that stuff. So I've mentioned healing I've experienced in my life, and one of the things I keep coming back to is how God never looked at me or at us as broken endless self-reflection improvement projects. He saw that there were things that needed to heal in my life. But I want to make this distinction. He was the gentle voice reminding me it was okay to be wherever I am in my life. And not only that, but he was the one reminding me that I could just let go, that I could stop trying to fix myself, that there was nothing to fix. And I had not seen myself like that in a long time because I'd spent years trying to fix myself, especially with what I was dealing with. And voices around me were making me feel like I wasn't doing enough. and I just felt like I needed to be fixed. I mean, here I was hearing voices, here I was crying all the time, sometimes for hours. Here I was feeling practically suicidal most of the time. Here I was sometimes hurting myself, um, dealing with really dark thoughts, dealing with a lot of self-hatred, um, just feeling horrible about myself, feeling like I was a horrible person, feeling like I needed to and deserved to punish myself, just all these things that um, society and the mental health system and even other people would see as just broken, you know? I had such a hard time, like, smiling or laughing. Like, I really couldn't even smile or laugh because I was just so sad all the time, or I was so numb. So here, that's the point I was in my life. And I had labels put on me, and I had people tell me that, I would maybe always deal with something. And I had things spoken over my life. And I felt like it wasn't okay for me to be struggling in that way, especially because I'd been struggling for years. But God was the voice reminding me that I could let go. That I could let go, that I could let go of trying to fix myself. But not only that, but that there was nothing that needed to be fixed. There were things that needed to be healed. But that's the amazing thing, is that healing is in God's love. When we don't feel that way, where we feel like it's okay for us to be wherever we are in our life, and come to a place of seeing that it's okay wherever we are, we end up using so much energy fighting, resisting, and a lot of the time beating ourselves down and feeling all this shame for different things we're struggling with, instead of actually being able to use that time and space to heal. When I felt it coming up in my spirit one day, that God was not the voice pushing me to try harder as I was running myself to the ground, trying to fix myself and all the things I was struggling with mentally. But He was the one that longed to heal me in His love, where I could rest in who He is. Healing from things can seem so daunting and arduous, but that is what is so amazing to me, that I could rest, and it was about being loved by God. He doesn't see us as a project that needs to be fixed, or as this broken person that needs to be fixed, like we hear from society and kind of different voices around us that make us feel like we're never doing enough, that make us feel like we're never good enough, that make us feel like it's not okay for us to be wherever we are in our lives. He is the voice that reminds us that we can let go, and He longs to love us. And that is the most amazing thing, is after everything I've been through, I can say it is that love, it is His love that has brought that healing in my life that I never thought could be possible. Or I wondered, does God want this for me? And yes, He wanted that for me. He wanted to love me. He wanted to bring that healing in my life that only He could bring. Because therapists can help you, and medication can help, and things like that. But God is the only person that can heal those deepest places inside of us. Only He knows everything we've been through. Only He knows exactly what we need to hear, and what we need ministered to our hearts, and what we need. And when a lot of the time the trauma and the pain that we've been through is from the enemy, from our spiritual enemy, God is the only person that can bring that restoration spiritually. Because what we really look for when we feel broken like that, when we feel broken beyond repair, when we feel broken beyond healing, what we are really looking for a lot of the time is love. So he wanted to love me, to heal that pain and emotional turmoil in his love. We get to have that love that we're really looking for. To be loved in that way our minds and hearts cry out for. I don't know about you, but when I was at my lowest points in my life, I was incredibly lonely and felt like no one understood what I was going through and felt negative reactions or shamed when I would try to reach out or speak up. As much as I wanted to be listened to and to feel better, what I really wanted was love, but not just any love, a love that could somehow heal all the deep pain inside and all the pieces of me that felt shattered beyond healing. And that's who God was and has been. And I want you to understand, if you have felt the way I have, there's nothing wrong with you. God doesn't see you as something wrong with you when you're in pain and struggling. He sees his child he longs to love, to fill you with, and give you the love maybe you never received in your life, and the love you looked for and needed through the pain you've experienced in your life. And I love, there's a verse in the Psalms, and I was reading a blog post, I think it was yesterday, and this person was talking about healing from pain, healing from trauma, and talking about how God heals. And I totally echo that sentiment. I totally agree and can say that. And he was bringing up the verse in the Psalms that God is close to the brokenhearted and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. And I love that verse so much because it reminds us that he is close to us. He is right beside us, and everything that we are feeling, everything we are walking through, every pain that we've ever experienced, even when we feel like he has forgotten us, even when we can't feel him near, even when we can't see him working in our lives, even when it feels like nothing is changing, that he is still close beside us. His word says, never will he leave us, never will he forsake us. And I just love that reminder that when we are brokenhearted, when we are in pain, he is holding us in the midst of that. He is showing us and filling us with his love in the midst of that he is close beside us. And he saves those who are crushed in spirit. He brings restoration. He brings healing to our hearts, to our spirit, to our minds, through his love. And I talk so much about his love because it's so incredible, and I can't speak enough about it. His love is everything. His love is everything. And even I need those reminders because we have not learned to look at God in that way a lot of time, or a relationship with God when we have been through certain things or we have heard certain things about him. We've not learned to see him fully as our Heavenly Father who truly loves us, who's always waiting in his love, who longs to love us, who longs to heal that pain, longs to build us back up when we feel broken in his presence. And that every time we come to God, he is waiting with open arms for us. He is waiting in his love. He is waiting to love you. It is his love that heals, his love, and as he fills us with his love, it changes the way we see ourselves and treat ourselves as we learn to see ourselves through his eyes and have a love, grace, and compassion for ourselves. That love is everything. So not only do we receive his love, but it changes the way we see ourselves. It changes the way we treat ourselves, how we have learned to look at ourselves based on what we've heard in our life and the pain that we've carried and the beliefs that we've carried. It also heals that simultaneously. And that love is everything. That love is so healing. Not only the love that he gives to us, but the love that he fills us with that changes the way we see ourselves and treat ourselves. That love that we learn to have ourselves, how we learn to see ourselves through his eyes as his beloved child. And I want to show this contrast because I think that is such a kind of different model of healing than we often hear. Um, and I looked for healing, I looked for healing and stuff in therapy. And I not only hear a lot about healing and like therapy, but also different healing ministries of like going over memories or going back into the past. And I'm not against that per se, but I know it doesn't work for everyone. And I want anyone watching this to know, like, there's healing found in Jesus. That every time, like, He is with us. He is with us in all things. He is with us everywhere we go. His Spirit lives within our hearts. Every time He is ministering to us or comforting us or He is just loving us, and we're having those moments where we're in tears because He's reaching places deep inside of us that we didn't even know need healed. Every single time that is happening, every single time we're spending time with Him, there's a healing happening. And it's like a little bit more of us is healing, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, till we look back and we look at how far we've come with God. And not just that, but learn about the security of that love and that relationship we have with God. That no matter who turns their back on you in this life, even when you feel like you have no one, that God is always there. And God is always waiting in His love for us to completely embrace us. And this is different than how we hear healing in terms of like therapy and stuff. But I want anyone to know that has gone through that process and has not been helped by it or anything like that, and I wondered about this for a long time, you don't necessarily have to go back through all these memories in your life, I believe. I mean, I did go through a process where there were just memories coming up, but talking about memories and things you've been through, I don't necessarily believe you have to go through all that to experience healing. And I think for some people, talking about that stuff more like re-traumatizes people. And believe it or not, but therapists and counselors, like, yes, they have licenses and things like that. Yes, they've been trained with different tools and techniques. But trauma can be such a sensitive thing that not only does not every therapist or counselor not know what they're doing, but sometimes going back over those things or talking about those things can actually more re-traumatize and kind of make things worse and kind of make us feel more stuck in the past. I had an experience recently where I felt just this counselor kind of digging back into my past, which is kind of what I call it, is like when someone just right off the bat is asking if you've been through anything traumatic or anything like that. It feels like people are just trying to dig back into your past because people feel like if they can uncover these things you've been through that have affected you, then you can finally be healed, or then you won't struggle with certain things. And I believe like God's love is sufficient in a way where as He's ministering to us, He is healing that. Without necessarily always the need to go back into those memories and talk about them and rehash them and things like that. Sometimes, like, God has kind of taken me through different memories, or different memories have come up. But I just wondered that for like a long time and felt like it just was not working for me. And I just was like, I'm trying to heal. I feel like I'm just feeling worse. But yet, when I was in God's presence and I was experiencing His love, it's just so incredible. I felt like there was this healing happening, and there was. So I was at a Christian place once, and there was this older person that had been through different forms of healing, particularly healing ministry. They had started sharing something and started crying, and as they kept apologizing for it, which I relate to, I felt what felt like God leading me to talk to this person, and I just so badly wanted her to know and felt like God wanted her to know that there was nothing wrong with her, as God had reminded me of that in my life. And I have really questioned this in my life as a Christian a lot, as someone that has experienced healing, as someone that loves talking about God's love. Like, it's so incredible. And I have wondered, like, if we're in this constant place of love and we're really knowing God's love and we're not living in this relationship with God where we're constantly monitoring our sins, but we're living in this security of His love. Like, I have wondered, like, what if I'm wrong? Like, what if it's just the way I want things to be? And, it's kind of scary speaking out on these things. Obviously, the proof and evidence is not only what God has healed me from and brought me out of, and the amazing, miraculous healing and restoration I've seen in my life, mentally and emotionally, but His love is everything. And it just amazes me because in the security of that love and that security of that relationship we have in His love, it's like it just covers everything as a Christian. And not just that, but God longs to give us that love that we really long for, our hearts really long for. And it's like we get to have that in our lives, that gets to be our existence that we live. And so it's times like these where, like, I will just kind of be observing what's happening, and I will just kind of feel God pressing on my heart and pressing on my spirit, and just really opening my eyes to how important it is for people to really truly know His love, and for people to like, know that there's nothing wrong with them, that He doesn't see them as this project that needs to be fixed, but really not just the mental and emotional healing, but also even when it comes to sins and things we're struggling with, happens in this amazing place of His love, when we're in that place of His love, which we're always in that place of His love. But what I mean is that we know that security of that relationship we have with Him. And, the way you would have a relationship with, like, another person where they love you, where someone is waiting in their love for you, where that you can rest in someone's love for you. When you come to that person, they're not going to criticize you. They're not pointing out what you do wrong. They're waiting in their love for you. They're waiting to embrace you. They're waiting to love you. It's like that is the relationship we have with God, and that we can tell Him anything. He wants us to bring Him everything, every anxiety, every fear, every care, that He is always listening. And He wants to take that and lift that off our shoulders, because all this stuff that we go through weighs so heavy. And that is who He is. The Bible says God is love. And so it's moments like these, as I'm kind of observing things and I'm watching this person, that I just was really reminded of, like, how important it is for us to know God's love. And it really deeply upset me because this was like a person that was quite a bit older, and it really grieved my heart to see someone in their older age that had been carrying this feeling or this thought or this belief that there was something wrong with her, and feeling like God saw her in that way. Like, that just really deeply upset me. So I was trying to talk to this person, but I was struggling to speak loud enough, but I could tell she wasn't really grasping it. And she had kept talking about sins she used to struggle with, and in that moment, I just wanted to look her in the eyes, and I wanted her to understand that there's nothing wrong with her. And I believe I tried to remind her that she's fully forgiven and that there's rest in Jesus. Not that we look at ourselves and our relationship with God, but Him. That we are secure in His love. That we are forgiven of everything. And something that I've been reflecting on recently is this idea of resting in His love and His grace and His mercy and His forgiveness. Resting in it. Resting in all that Jesus has done on the cross. And in His love. And having this relationship with the Lord where I come as I am to Him repeatedly. And this is so important because so often we only bring those parts of ourselves that we think are acceptable to the Lord, when we know that He knows every thought, He knows every action, etc. It's so important that we do this, though, because a lot of times those very things that we hide, or those very things that we learn to have shame for, are the very parts of us that we felt were not acceptable in our lives, or we felt weren't loved. So when we come as we are to the Lord, completely, honestly, vulnerably, just as we are, when we aren't constantly trying to fix ourselves or clean ourselves up, but we come to Him just as we are, we get to experience that love, that He loves every single part of us, the parts of us that feel broken, the parts that we've learned to feel shame for, the parts that we've learned to hide, the parts that we feel are unacceptable. We get to experience that He loves every single part of us. And there is also a healing that happens in that, because that love maybe we didn't feel for certain parts of ourselves, we get to feel and experience from Him. Because the Bible talks about how He loved us at our darkest. He loved us no matter what we had done, that He knew every single sin we would ever commit. And He willingly gave Himself up to go on the cross. He died for every sin, past, future, and the present. Because He loves us. There is no greater love. Shed His blood for every transgression. Redeemed us, forgave us, and calls us His child forever. And He loves us so much. You are worth everything to Him. That He gave His life for you and poured out His blood. And so He longs to be with us. He is always with us, but He loves being with us. And whatever we're feeling, whatever we're going through, He just wants to be with you. That you just call out to Him, talk to Him. Even in the moments where we feel like we don't have words to pray or we're crying, He's there with us, close beside us, holding us in the midst of it. And He longs to love you constantly, continually, for that to be a relationship with God. And as I mentioned in, I believe, my last video, how it is that love that sets us free. This love that casts out every fear, this perfect love that calms our anxieties, and where we know the peace we have with God and His love that is eternally secure. So thank you guys so much for watching. I know this video has been a conglomeration of things, but I really hope this video can help you in any way. I love you guys so much. I hope you're all doing all right, and God bless you.